The sirens had been screaming for 20 minutes. Danny Kim was only 11 years old, but he knew what those sirens meant. They meant run. They meant leave everything behind. They meant the monsters had come. He ran through the streets of New Haven Colony with his little sister on his back. Lily was only 5. She was too small to run fast enough, so Danny carried her. His legs burned. His chest hurt. But he did not stop. Behind them, the colony was on fire. Buildings that Danny had known his whole life were now nothing but smoke and flame. The school where he learned to read. The park where he played with his friends. The small house where his family had lived for 3 years. All of it was burning. The Varth had come without warning. Danny had learned about them in school. They were a species that traveled across the stars, taking whatever they wanted. They took planets. They took resources. They took people. His teacher had said that the Varth did not see other species as equals. They saw them as things to be used. Danny had always thought the Varth were far away. He had always thought they would never come to his small colony on the edge of human space. He had been wrong. His parents had pushed him out the door when the first explosion started. His mother had put Lily in his arms. His father had looked at him with serious eyes. "Run to the shuttles," his father had said. "Do not stop for anything. Do not look back. Protect your sister." "But what about you?" Danny had asked. His father had not answered. He had just pushed Danny toward the door and turned back into the house. Danny never saw his parents again. Now Danny ran. He ran past burning buildings and screaming people. He ran past Varus soldiers who were too busy with other things to notice one small boy. He ran until his legs would not carry him anymore. He fell in the middle of an open field, 3 kilometers from the emergency shuttles. He could see them in the distance, small shapes rising into the sky one by one. They were leaving. They were leaving without him. Lily was crying on his back. She was saying, "Danny, Danny," over and over again. But Danny could not answer her. He could not breathe. He could not move. His body had given up. A shadow fell over him. Danny looked up and saw a Varus soldier standing above him. The creature was tall, almost 3 meters high. It had a body like an insect, with hard armor covering its chest and long limbs that ended in sharp points. Its head had 2 large eyes that reflected the flames of the burning colony like dark mirrors. The soldier made a clicking sound with its mouth. Then it spoke in a strange mechanical voice that came from a device on its chest. "Viable specimens. Young. Compliant. Mark for processing." Danny did not know what those words meant, but he knew they were bad. He wrapped his arms tighter around Lily and closed his eyes. He waited for something terrible to happen, but nothing happened. Instead, he heard footsteps. Then he heard a voice. It was a woman's voice, calm and steady. "Kid, get behind me." Danny opened his eyes. A woman had stepped between him and the Varus soldier. She was not tall. She was not big. She wore old clothes that looked like they had been through many hard years. Her dark hair was pulled back from her face, and her eyes were looking at the alien soldier without any fear. Her name was Grace Park. She was 34 years old. She had been a cargo pilot before she came to New Haven. She had a record of breaking laws and causing trouble. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was that she had seen a boy fall, and she had seen a monster standing over him, and something inside her had made her walk forward instead of running away. The Varus soldier made that clicking sound again. It seemed confused. One adult female, unarmed, no tactical value. The mechanical voice was flat and cold. "Step aside." Grace did not move. She tilted her head a little, like she was thinking about something. "Here's the thing," she said. "I don't want to." The soldier raised a weapon. It was a long rod that glowed with blue light. Danny had seen other Vorth soldiers use these weapons. They did not kill people. They captured them. They wrapped people in energy and made them unable to move. "Final warning," the soldier said. "Step aside or be neutralized." Grace still did not move. Danny watched her from behind, his heart beating so fast he could feel it in his throat. Why was she not running? Why was she not afraid? "I've got a different idea," Grace said. Her voice was still calm, still steady, like she was talking about the weather instead of facing an alien soldier. "You turn around. You walk back to your ship. You leave this colony alone." The soldier's eyes seemed to flicker. Danny thought it might be laughing. "And if I refuse?" Grace's hand moved slowly to her jacket pocket. She pulled out a small tool. Danny recognized it. It was a plasma cutter, the kind that workers use to cut through metal. It was not a weapon. It was not dangerous. But Grace held it like it was the most powerful thing in the universe. "Then I'm going to show you something," she said. "I'm going to show you what happens when you corner something that doesn't know how to give up." Danny did not understand what she meant. The Vorth soldier did not understand either. It stood there for a moment, its weapon still raised, trying to calculate the threat level of this small human woman with her small human tool. It made a mistake. It decided she was not dangerous. It would be the last mistake many Vorth soldiers made that day. Grace looked back at Danny for just a second. Her eyes were hard but kind. "When I move," she said quietly, "you pick up your sister and you run. You run and you don't stop until you reach those shuttles. Understand?" Danny nodded. He did not trust his voice to speak. Grace turned back to the soldier. She took a deep breath. And then she did something that Danny would remember for the rest of his life. She walked forward. Not backward. Not sideways. Forward. Toward the monster. Toward the danger. Toward the thing that every part of her brain should have been telling her to run from. She walked forward because there were 2 children behind her who could not protect themselves. She walked forward because someone had to. She walked forward because that was who she was. The Vorth soldier raised its weapon. Grace Park did not stop. The Vorth Empire had conquered many worlds. They had taken 412 different species under their control. They had spread across 17 star systems, and everywhere they went, they won. They always won. It was what they did. Their success came from a simple method. They studied every species they met. They learned their strengths and weaknesses. They put this information into files and databases. Then they used this information to defeat them. The Vorth had a file on humans. It was not a very long file. Humans were listed as Tier 7, which meant they were considered weak and unimportant. The file said that humans had no claws. They had no hard shells to protect their bodies. They could not run very fast. They could not see in the dark. They had no poison, no special powers, nothing that made them dangerous. The file said humans were useful as workers. They could follow instructions. They could operate machines. They could be trained to do simple tasks. But they were not a threat. They were just another species to be collected and used. There was one small note at the bottom of the file. A Vorth scientist had added it after studying humans on another colony. The note said, "Some humans show strange behavior when they're young or in danger. They become difficult to control. Recommend extra caution with family groups." The Vorth commanders had read this note. They had not understood it. They thought it was a small thing, not important enough to change their plans. They were wrong. The Vorth did not understand humans because they thought about the universe in a different way. To the Vorth, every action was a calculation. They measured risk against reward. They attacked when they could win. They retreated when they could not. Every decision was logical. Every choice made sense. Humans were not like this. Humans sometimes did things that made no sense at all. They sometimes fought when they could not win. They sometimes died for people they did not even know. They sometimes walked toward danger instead of away from it. The Vorath had a word for this kind of behavior. In their language, it meant broken. They thought humans who acted this way had something wrong with their brains. They did not understand that it was not a mistake. It was a choice. Grace Park was one of these humans. Her file in the human government records said she had problems with authority. It said she did not follow rules. It said she had a condition that made her react to threats by attacking instead of running. Doctors called it a hyper-aggressive stress response. Her bosses called it being difficult. Her ex-husband had called it something else. They had been married for 3 years before he decided he could not live with someone who got into fights with people twice her size because they were being rude to waiters. You're like a honey badger, he had told her once. Someone pokes you, and you don't just bite back. You try to destroy them completely. Grace had smiled when he said that. She knew about honey badgers. They were small animals from Earth that had no fear. They attacked lions. They fought snakes. They never gave up, even when they were clearly going to lose. Scientists said honey badgers were not very smart. They did not know when to quit. Grace understood this. She had never known when to quit either. Now she stood in the burning streets of New Haven Colony, facing a Vorath soldier that was 3 times her size. Her plasma cutter hummed in her hand. It was a tool for cutting metal, not a weapon. It would do very little damage to the soldier's armored body. Grace did not care. The soldier swung its capture rod toward her. The blue energy at the tip crackled and sparked. One touch, and she would be wrapped in restraining fields. Unable to move, ready for processing. Grace ducked under the swing. She was not fast, but she was expecting it. She had been in enough fights to know how to read an attack before it came. She pressed herself close to the soldier's body, inside its reach. The plasma cutter touched its leg joint, where the armor was thinnest. The smell of burning filled the air. The soldier made a sound that might have been surprise. It had not expected her to attack. Its calculations had said she would run or surrender. It had not planned for this. It swung at her again, but she was already moving. She rolled between its legs and came up behind it. The plasma cutter found another weak point. More burning. More surprised. The soldier spun around, trying to catch her, but Grace was small and quick. She stayed close, stayed moving, stayed attacking. She could not hurt it badly with her small tool, but she could hurt it enough to make it angry. She could hurt it enough to keep its attention. Behind her, she heard Danny get to his feet. She heard him pick up his sister. She heard small footsteps running away toward the shuttles. Good. The children were moving. That was what mattered. The soldier finally landed a blow. Its arm caught Grace across the chest and sent her flying. She hit the ground hard and felt something crack in her ribs. Pain exploded through her body. The soldier stood over her, its eyes reflecting the flames of the burning colony. "Foolish creature," it said through its translator. "You cannot win. Your species is weak." Grace coughed. Blood came out of her mouth. She looked up at the soldier with eyes that held no fear. "Maybe," she said, "but those kids are gone now. And I'm still not done." She raised her plasma cutter again. Her arm was shaking. Her ribs were screaming. But she was still moving, still fighting. The soldier tilted its head, confused. Its calculations did not make sense. This human should have stopped. This human should have given up. Why was she still fighting? Grace smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Here's the thing about honey badgers," she said. "We don't know when to quit." She attacked again. Grace Park was not a soldier. She had never been trained to fight. She had never held a real weapon. She was just a cargo pilot who had broken many rules and ended up on a small colony at the edge of human space. But Grace knew things. She knew how machines worked. She knew how to fix things that were broken. She knew which wires to cut and which chemicals to mix. She knew every tunnel and pipe under New Haven Colony because she had spent 2 years fixing them. Now she was going to use that knowledge to stay alive. The first Varus soldier was behind her, damaged but still following. Grace ran through the burning streets until she found what she was looking for, a maintenance hatch. She pulled it open and dropped into the darkness below. The tunnels under the colony were hot and full of smoke, but Grace knew them like she knew her own hands. She moved through the dark, listening for the sounds of pursuit. She heard them. Heavy footsteps. Clicking sounds. The Varus were sending soldiers after her. She counted the footsteps. There were many of them. Maybe 10. Maybe more. Grace smiled in the darkness. Good. The more soldiers following her. The fewer soldiers chasing Danny and his sister. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small light. She looked around the tunnel and saw what she needed. Support beams. Power cables. Pipes carrying chemicals for the colony's water treatment system. Grace got to work. The first group of Varus soldiers entered the tunnels 5 minutes later. There were 3 of them, moving carefully through the dark with their capture rods ready. They did not expect any danger. Their file said humans could not see well in darkness. Their file said humans were not dangerous. They walked past a certain support beam. Grace was hiding in a side tunnel, watching them through a crack in the wall. She held a piece of cut wire in her hand. She pulled the wire. The support beam collapsed. The tunnel above it came down in a roar of rock and metal. The 3 soldiers disappeared under tons of debris. Grace did not stay to watch. She was already moving deeper into the tunnels. 2 soldiers down. Many more to go. The next group was more careful. They moved slowly, checking every shadow. But they did not know what Grace knew. They did not know about the junction point where 4 tunnels met. They did not know about the storage tanks in the walls, full of cleaning chemicals that the colony used to purify water. Grace had opened those tanks. She had let the chemicals mix on the floor. She had created a pool of liquid that looked like water, but was something much more dangerous. When the 2 soldiers stepped into the junction, Grace threw a spark. The chemicals exploded. Fire filled the tunnels. The 2 soldiers screamed as flames covered their armor. Their screams did not last long. 4 more down. Grace kept moving. Her ribs hurt with every breath. Her clothes were torn and covered in blood. But she did not stop. She could not stop. Somewhere above her, Danny and Lily were still running toward the shuttles. Every minute she kept the Varus busy was another minute for them to escape. The next trap was in the maintenance hub. It was a large room full of machines that controlled the colony's power grid. Grace knew these machines. She had fixed them many times. She knew exactly which switches to flip to make the floor become electric death. She climbed onto an insulated platform in the corner of the room and waited. 4 more soldiers came. They saw her standing on the platform. They raised their weapons. They stepped onto the floor. Grace flipped a switch. The room filled with blue lightning. The soldiers shook and fell. Smoke rose from their bodies. The lights in the room flickered and died. Grace climbed down from the platform and walked past the bodies. 8 down now. How many were left? She found out in the storage bay. The last 3 soldiers cornered her in a dead end. There were no more tunnels to run through. No more traps to set. No more tricks to play. Grace looked at the 3 soldiers standing in front of her. They were big. They were armed. They were angry. Their comrades were dead because of her, and they wanted revenge. Grace looked at her plasma cutter. The power cell was almost empty. It had enough energy for maybe one more minute of cutting. That was not enough. That was not nearly enough. She thought about Danny and Lily. Were they safe? Had they reached the shuttles? She did not know. She hoped they had. She hoped all of this had meant something. She took a deep breath. Her ribs screamed in pain. Her body begged her to stop, to give up, to lie down and let it be over. But Grace Park did not know how to give up. She walked toward the soldiers. The leader made a clicking sound. "You are damaged. Your weapon is failing. You cannot win." Grace kept walking. "Probably not. Then why do you continue?" Grace thought about the question. Why did she continue? She was going to lose. She was going to die. Every calculation, every logical thought said she should surrender, but there was something inside her that did not care about calculations. There was something that said the only thing that mattered was not giving up. The only thing that mattered was fighting until you could not fight anymore. Because those kids might still need another minute, she said. And I've still got another minute in me. She raised her dying plasma cutter. The soldier raised its weapon. Grace charged. She did not fight like a soldier. She fought like an animal. She used her cutter until it died. Then she used a piece of broken pipe. Then she used her hands. Then she used her teeth. She bit and scratched and kicked and screamed. The soldiers hit her again and again. Her arm broke. Her nose broke. Blood covered her face until she could barely see. But she did not stop. She could not stop. One soldier fell. Then another. The third one finally knocked her to the ground and held her there. With its foot on her chest, Grace looked up at it through blood-blurred eyes. She smiled. 12 soldiers, she whispered. 12 of you for one human woman with a cutting tool. The soldier pressed down harder on her chest. Grace felt her broken ribs shift. The pain was incredible, but she was still smiling. I hope it was worth it, she said. I hope those kids got away. Then the darkness took her. Commander Dex stood on the bridge of his warship and watched the tactical feed from the planet below. He had commanded hundreds of operations like this one. He had conquered dozens of worlds. He had never seen anything like what he was seeing now. One human. One small, weak, unarmed human female. She had killed 11 of his soldiers. 11 trained warriors with weapons and armor. She had killed them with a cutting tool, with chemicals, with electricity, with her bare hands. Dex did not understand. His file said humans were Tier 7. His file said they were not dangerous. His files were wrong. He watched the recording again. He watched Grace Park stand between his soldier and the 2 children. He watched her refuse to move. He watched her attack with nothing but a tool meant for cutting metal. He watched her fight in the tunnels. He watched his soldiers die one by one. He watched her set traps that showed she knew the colony better than his tactical officers, knew their own ship's dot, and now he watched her in the storage bay. She was on her knees, unable to stand. She had a broken arm, broken ribs, cuts all over her face and body. She should have been unconscious. She should have been dead, but she was still conscious, still awake, still glaring at his remaining soldiers with eyes full of fire. Why does it not stop? Dex asked. His voice was quiet. His tactical officers stood beside him, watching the same feed. Unknown, Commander. The human has suffered injuries that should have caused surrender. Its body cannot continue fighting, and yet it continues. Yes, Commander. Dex watched Grace try to stand again. Her legs gave out. She fell back to her knees. But her eyes never stopped burning. Her jaw never stopped being hard and set. The last 2 soldiers stood over her with their weapons ready. They were waiting for orders. They were waiting for Dex to tell them what to do with this creature that refused to die. Dex's tactical officer spoke again. Commander, Our sensors show the two child targets have reached an evacuation shuttle. The shuttle has left the planet's surface. Dex nodded slowly. The mission had failed. The human woman had kept his soldiers busy long enough for the children to escape. She had one. No, not one. She had lost. She was captured. She was injured. She would probably die from her wounds. By every measure, she had been defeated. But somehow, standing on the bridge of his warship, surrounded by his soldiers and his weapons and his power, Dex felt like he was the one who had lost. He looked at the human on the screen. She had nothing left. Her weapon was gone. Her body was broken. She was alone in a room with two soldiers who could kill her at any moment, and she was still not afraid. Dex had conquered many species. He had seen many different kinds of fear. He had seen creatures beg and cry and plead for their lives. He seen creatures run and hide and pray to their gods. He had seen every kind of fear in the universe. He had never seen no fear at all. "Commander," his tactical officer said, "should we deploy additional forces to secure the colony? We have achieved partial harvest objectives. The colony has many other viable specimens." Dex thought about the question. He thought about sending more soldiers to the surface. He thought about what would happen if they met more humans like this one. He thought about the cost. "No," he said. "Recall all ground forces." The tactical officer's eyes widened. "Commander? You heard me. Recall all forces. We are leaving this system. But Commander, we have not completed the harvest. There are still many humans to collect. Our mission parameters require. Our mission parameters did not include losing 12 soldiers to one unarmed female." Dex's voice was hard. "Our files on this species are wrong. We need to update them before we continue operations." He looked at the screen one more time. Grace Park had finally collapsed. She was lying on the floor of the storage bay, unconscious but alive. His soldiers were standing over her, waiting. "Leave her," Dex said. "Commander, leave her. Leave all of them. We are done with this world." The tactical officer hesitated. "Commander, with respect, this is highly irregular. Central Command will want to know why. Central Command will receive my report." Dex turned away from the screen. "Send a priority message to all Vorath commands. Humanity is to be reclassified. They are no longer Tier 7. What classification should we assign them?" Dex thought about the woman on the screen. He thought about her eyes. He thought about the way she had walked toward death without hesitation, without fear, without any of the self-preservation that every other species showed. "Tier 3, he said. "Conditional threat. Add a note to the file. Avoid engagement with humans protecting offspring or perceived family members. Casualty projections in such encounters are acceptable." The tactical officer nodded and began entering the information. On the planet below, the Vorath soldiers received their recall orders. They left Grace Park lying on the floor of the storage bay. They did not understand why they were leaving. They did not understand why their commander was afraid of a species that had no claws, no poison, no armor. They did not understand that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe is not the creature with the biggest weapons. Sometimes it is the creature that will not stop. Grace Park lay in the dark, alone, bleeding, broken. She did not know that the Vorath were leaving. She did not know that Danny and Lily had escaped. She did not know that her refusal to give up had changed the way an entire empire thought about her species. She only knew that she had done what she could. She had stood between the monsters and the children. She had fought until she could not fight anymore. That was enough. That had to be enough. The darkness took her, and Grace Park finally stopped fighting. For a long moment, she did not know where she was. She did not know if she was alive or dead. Everything hurt. Her arm was wrapped in hard material. Her chest was covered in bandages. Machines beeped quietly beside her bed. A face appeared above her. A human face. A doctor in a white coat. "Miss Park," the doctor said. "Welcome back. You've been unconscious for 3 days." Grace tried to speak. Her throat was dry and rough. "The children," she whispered. "The boy and his sister. Today, they're safe." The doctor smiled. The shuttle picked them up. They made it to the evacuation fleet. They're both healthy and unharmed. Grace closed her eyes. Something wet ran down her cheeks. She was crying, she realized. She did not cry often. But this news was worth crying about. "The Vorath?" she asked. "Gone. They left the system. Our military arrived 40 minutes after they withdrew. They found you in a storage bay under the colony." The doctor paused. "You were surrounded by dead Vorath soldiers. 11 of them. Our teams couldn't believe what they were seeing." Grace opened her eyes again. 12. There were 12. One of them was still alive when I passed out. It left with the others. They all left. The doctor shook his head. "Miss Park, what you did down there was extraordinary. You held off an entire squad of Vorath soldiers by yourself. You gave the evacuation shuttles time to escape. You saved hundreds of lives." Grace did not feel like a hero. She felt tired. She felt broken. She felt like someone who had done what needed to be done and was now paying the price for it. "How bad am I?" she asked. The doctor's smile faded a little. "You have 3 broken ribs, a broken arm, a fractured cheekbone, and internal bleeding that required 2 surgeries to repair. You lost a lot of blood. You have cuts and burns all over your body." He paused. "You should have died, Miss Park. By every medical measure, you should not have survived." "I'm hard to kill," Grace said. "Yes," the doctor agreed. "You certainly are." Grace spent 3 months in the medical center. She had 4 more surgeries. She learned to walk again. She learned to use her arm again. She did physical therapy every day until her body ached and her muscles screamed. She received many visitors during those months. Military officers who wanted to interview her. Government officials who wanted to give her medals. Journalists who wanted to hear her story. Grace talked to them all, but she did not enjoy the attention. She had not done what she did for medals or fame. She had done it because there had been children who needed help and no one else to help them. But one visitor was different from the others. He came near the end of her recovery, when she was almost ready to leave. He was a boy, 11 years old, with serious eyes and a nervous way of standing. He held a piece of paper in his hands. "Miss Park," he said, "do you remember me?" Grace looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. "Danny Kim, I remember you. I'm glad you're okay." Danny walked closer to her bed. He held out the piece of paper. "My sister made this for you. She wanted me to give it to you." Grace took the paper. It was a drawing made with colored pencils. It showed 3 figures, 2 small ones and 1 larger one. The larger one had dark hair and was standing between the small ones and a group of monsters. "She calls you the lady who stopped the bad things," Danny said. Grace looked at the drawing for a long time. Her eyes were wet again. She wiped them with her good hand. "I'm not a hero," she said finally. "I just don't know how to stop once I get started." Danny shook his head. "My dad used to say that's what makes someone a hero. Knowing you can't win but fighting anyway." Grace looked at the boy. He was so young. He had lost so much. His parents were gone. His home was gone. But he was still standing. He was still going forward. "Your dad was a smart man," she said. "He was," Danny agreed. His voice was sad but steady. "He told me to protect my sister. I tried to, but I couldn't do it alone. No one can do everything alone, Grace said. That's why we help each other. Danny nodded. He looked at the drawing in Grace's hands. Will you keep it? I will keep it forever, Grace said. And she meant it. Danny left after that. Grace held the drawing and looked at it until the light faded outside her window. The lady who stopped the bad things. She liked that name. It was simple and true. The Vorath never returned to human space. Their official records said it was because of unfavorable conditions and logistical problems. But the real reason was different. The real reason was in a file that was sent to every Vorath commander in the Empire. The file had a new classification for humans. Tier 3, conditional threat. It had a warning. Avoid engagement with humans protecting offspring or perceived family members. Casualty projections in such encounters are unacceptable. Across the galaxy, other species began to hear the story. The story of a colony called New Haven. The story of a small human woman who faced an army with nothing but a cunning tool and a refusal to quit. The story spread from world to world, from species to species. Humans, the galaxy learned, were not remarkable because of their size or strength or speed. They had no claws, no poison, no armor. But they had something else. They had people who would walk into fire for strangers. People who would stand against impossible odds because someone had to. People who would not stop fighting until their hearts stopped beating. The galaxy had a word for these people now. They called them honey badgers. It was a human word for a small animal that attacked creatures 10 times its size. An animal that fought lions and snakes and never gave up, even when it was clearly going to lose. Humans, it turned out, had honey badgers of their own. And they were everywhere. Years later, a scientist from another species came to visit Grace Park. He had traveled across many star systems to meet her. He wanted to understand what had happened on New Haven. He wanted to understand humans. Why did you do it? He asked. You could not win. You knew you could not win. What drove you to fight? Grace thought about the question for a long time. She thought about Danny and Lily. She thought about the fire and the tunnels and the storage bay. She thought about the moment when she had decided to walk forward instead of running away. Those kids had no one else, she said finally. So I became their someone else. The scientist wrote down her answer. He studied it for many years. He published papers about it. But he admitted, in the end, that he did not fully understand it. Some things, it seemed, were simply human, and the galaxy would never forget it.